Hi friends! Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Tina Zink and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Nova Scotia, Canada. And if you're returning, welcome back. I appreciate all of you so much and I'm excited to do today's card demonstration for you. Now I am in full-blown Christmas card making. I am making so many Christmas cards this year. I think a lot of us are, especially with everything going on in the world. These paper hugs that we create and send in the mail really do make a difference in the lives of others. So I am making a lot of Christmas cards and I thought I would share the Christmas card design that I've created using the In the Pines stamp set and dies. This is such a beautiful bundle. So without further ado, let's get stamping. Okay, so here's the stamp set that I'm using. And I'm not going to be using any dies. We have beautiful coordinating dies for this stamp set, but for this card I'm not going to use the dies. I'm just going to use the stamp set, and I have pre-cut a piece of Whisper White cardstock, and this measures 4 by 5 1/4. And then I have these sticky notes, and they're exactly 4 inches across, so that's perfect. And what I did is I just went through and I took 4 of them and I cut them in different shapes, and these are going to make my snowbanks that I'm going to sponge on. So I'm just going to go ahead and start putting them down. I'm going to start at the bottom. I want to make sure it goes all the way across, like so. And then I'm going to put this one on. And then that one. So I'm just stacking them on top of each other. There we go. So these are the ink pads I'm going to be using: Highland Heather, Misty Moonlight, Balmy Blue, and Seaside Spray. So for the top section, this is going to be the sky, and then I'll have the snowdrifts down below. Okay, so I am using a sponge dauber. You can use our Stampin' Sponges. So I'm starting with the Balmy Blue first. I'm just dabbing, and I'm going on my scrap paper first because I don't want to dab a heavy amount of ink. I just want to start going really, really light, and I'm just going to go in little circles. Dab it off. It might be hard to see on camera, but I'm really going lightly and pulling that ink up as I go. And I have ink on my finger, and I just pulled up some purple. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm not gonna worry about that. I'm just gonna keep on going. I will blend that in with the other colors, or I think that's where we're gonna put a Christmas tree. Okay, now I'm gonna go up around the top. And again, I'm just going in circles, and where I've got some heavier ink, I'm not going to worry about that too much because I am going to be adding darker ink on top of this. So I'm just pulling in that blue, going in circles. So now I have the Balmy Blue. I'm going to move on to my Seaside Spray. Dab that off, and I'm going to come across just above that first line and blend it down into that Balmy Blue. Again, going in circles, trying to go with a very light touch. And I know I have heavier ink on the side that I'm starting, but that's okay because I'm going to add darker ink on that side. Add a little bit of Highland Heather. Whenever I do any kind of sky, I always like adding rich raspberry or some kind of purple shade. I just love that. So I'm just working this into my dauber because I really don't want a dark streak. So I've got it nicely worked in, and now I'm just gonna start moving it across the page, going into circles right across the other end. I'm gonna pull that down a little bit. And that's so pretty. And as I'm doing that, I can tell I want a little bit more of the balmy blue down below. So I'm going to pull that back in. And this is one of those things that you just kind of have to play around with until you're happy with it. I'm just going to pull some more of that blue in down here. And I'm going to work it into that Highland Heather and that Seaside Spray. Okay. And now I'm going to bring in my darkest blue, which is Misty Moonlight, and another ink dauber. So again, I'm inking that up and I'm just rubbing it into, working it into the dauber, I should say. Okay, and again, just start moving it across the page, going into circles. I have to work on a diagonal for some reason. And a little bit more, and I'm blending it right into that purple and pulling it right down. And I do want this to be darker on the top, so I am adding more of that color, and it's just looking so pretty. Whoops, didn't mean for it to be that dark, but that's okay. I don't worry about things like that, friends. I just go with the process, and the more you do, the easier it gets. The easier it gets because you start getting a feel for it. All right, going back into my Highland Heather, and I just keep working the colors in until I get that look that I want. Blending it right up into that blue and pulling it down. Bringing my Seaside Spray again. And work that in just below where my purple is. And I'm keeping that lighter shade of blue down below, right along this line. Work that right in. Okay, and add a little bit more of the balmy blue, and then the sky is done. And you know, you can hardly see that purple now. So this is why, you know, it's nice just to stick with the project if you feel like throwing it out as you're going along. Those things that we think are mistakes usually just work in just fine. Okay, there is my sky. So I'm going to peel off this first layer. So now you can see I've got my snow bank down here and my sky. It's looking so cool. So now I'm going back in with the balmy blue, and I'm just going to lightly go across this line. And I definitely want to keep some white there. So I'm just going to work very carefully going across this line. Okay. Now I'm bringing in my Seaside Spray, and I'm going to add a little bit here because I want that to kind of be a shadow where I'm going to put the tree, or at least one of my trees. So I'm just adding a little bit darker so it kind of looks a little bit icy, and a little bit over here too. What we get is always magical when you peel that off. So you see how it looks like I've got the shadows. Love it. I'm going to repeat exactly the same thing, starting with the balmy blue and going right along this cut line. And I'm blending it right up into this corner. And I've got a little bit too much ink there, but again, I'm going to stamp a tree. So you know what? Trees are going to hide anything that maybe didn't work out the way you wanted it to. Okay. a little bit of the Seaside spray. I'm going to put some right in here. That's going to be a little hollow dip where a tree's going to go. Just a bit. And then I want to work those colors in with my Seaside spray. So you see it's just playing around. Playing, working with the inks. And now we move that mask. You can see how it's all coming together. Oh, so much fun. Same thing, going into my balmy blue, going right along the edge. Dab off some of that ink, it's a little bit too strong. And I'm just ever so gently going in circles, working it all in. And Seaside spray, a little bit right in here. And because I have it dark here, I'm going to add a little bit in there too. And then I'm going in with that Misty Moonlight again, just a tiny little bit, just to add that little shadow. And work that in a little bit more with the balmy blue, just kind of blending it all together so it's not too stark. I want definitely that shadow of this balmy blue on there. Really coming together nicely. So I do have the big bank down here of snow, but I'm going to stamp my sentiment down here. So all I'm going to do is take my dauber, go into my balmy blue, and I'm just going to go down around the edge. I'm going to pull some of that Seaside spray in. Balmy Seaside spray, there we go. Again, I'm dabbing it off so it's not too harsh, and I'm just going to kind of pull it down in the corners where the ink's a little bit dark and just work it in. I'll do a little bit in this corner. Okay, so there is my background. I am so pleased with how that's come out. It looks so pretty, and I don't even have the trees or anything on there yet. So I am taking my embossing buddy, so it's an anti-static bag, because I'm going to add some versamark and embossing powder, and I want to make sure I don't get embossing powder where I don't want it. Okay. So I'm going to start with my little trees, because they're gonna go right here. So put those on my block. So I'm gonna ink those with the versamark ink. And before I stamp it down, I'm going to stamp them into my garden green ink pad. Then I'm gonna stamp it down right there. Okay, so now I'm taking the outline trees that go on top. Again, ink them up with the versamark. And this time I'm going to use shaded spruce. Dab that in. And I'm going to take my old, what color is this? Early Espresso, and just go on the tree trunks. And because I have the versamark behind this first, my embossing powder will stick. So I'm going to stamp this on top. Try very hard not to get my head in the camera and line this up at the same time. Look at you guys. Oh my goodness, it's so pretty. Okay. Don't know where my spoon is, so I'm just going to dump this right on. This is my clear embossing powder, and I'm going to set that with the heat tool. There they are, embossed and shiny and beautiful. I'm going to do that again with some different trees. Now I know I want this big tree down here, so I'm going to stamp that first, because yes, this is yet another design on the fly by Tina. I knew I was going to be making cards like this today, and I just put the camera on and, you know, hope it turns out and that it's worthy of sharing with everybody. So I've got my versamark and my garden green, and I'm going to stamp this down here. I'm just going to stamp it down a little bit. I don't want the tree branch to come through on that. So now I'm going to go in with my outline, and just going to put on this block, get it to fit on there. Here we go. Versamark and shaded spruce. And do my best to line it up. So pretty. And I'm going to emboss each tree as I stamp them. That way I'm not smudging any ink while it's still wet. So I'm going to go ahead and heat set that. Alrighty, I need more trees. I had to figure out what I was going to do. So I am going to take this same stamp, but this time I'm only going to stamp 2 of the trees, not that third one. So I got my versamark and my garden green, and I'm going to stamp off right down over here. So they're going to go off the page just a little bit. Okay, my outline image. Same thing, I only need to ink up those 2 trees and my shaded spruce and my early espresso marker. And I'm going to put this mat right here because it's going to stamp off the page here. Okay, I'm getting a little forest. Okay, I have an idea. I have brought in the Merry Moose stamp set, and I want to see what this moose is going to look like on this card. So I'm going to go ahead and let's stamp the solid one first. Okay, so I have my solid moose. I'm going to ink him with crumb cake ink and just stamp him right down here. Next, I'm taking the outline portion of the moose and I'm going to stamp him right on top. Okay. And emboss the outline. I really got to find my spoon for this embossing powder. I know I have it around somewhere. Okay. I'm not convinced I'm going to be using the moose, but the cool thing is because we have a coordinating punch, I can punch him out and place him on the card and see if I like it. Alright, so here's the coordinating punch. So punch out our Christmas moose. And if I decide not to use them on the card, no harm done, because I can use them for another project. And look, I've got green there. My goodness, I'm gonna have to hide that. The moose actually looks pretty good. What would the moose look like up here? The moose might have to go there to hide that ink, but then that's perfect because look, it looks like he's walking right along that snow bed. So you'll see, it all works out. All right, I'm happy with this. See, you know, I was gonna put the moose down here, but we got the ink blob where I didn't want it, and it's all gonna work out. Okay, I do want to stamp a bigger tree down here, so that's what I'm doing here. So I've got the medium-sized tree and my versamark, and this tree, oops, green, garden green. I'm gonna stamp this off the page as well. I'm gonna stamp it right about there. And then I need my outline stamp. This set is so much fun. I'm so glad I got it, that's all I can say. Because there's so many things from our holiday catalog that I had on my wish list, and I hum and hawed. And I love trees. I love anything to do with trees and leaves, and so I decided to get it, and boy am I ever glad that I did. All right, let's line this up. And emboss it. Oh my goodness, that's gonna look so cool. This is gonna be for my guy for Christmas. He's gonna love this card. And now I was gonna put the sentiment down here. I'm not sure if I'm gonna do that yet, but I have a little bit more embossing to do yet. So in this stamp set, we have this image here. So we've got our snow, and that's what I'm gonna stamp now. So instead of using the versamark, I'm going to use our Craft Whisper White. So this is a pigment-based ink, which means that we can emboss right on top. It stays wet longer than our dye-based ink. And I'm just going to add some snow and emboss that with clear. Okay, so I have my embossed snow, and I'm going to go back over again using the same stamp and ink pad just to add a little bit more white, and I'm not going to emboss these ones. But it's great because I get that wet texture that you would get with snow, and it just looks so cool. A nice snowy sky. So now I'm going to put this onto my card base. All right, I have decided to go with a Poppy Parade card base just because I want to start adding some Christmas colors in here. I'm going to grab my Stampin' Seal, and I will pull some of that Poppy Parade into the stamped card piece. So I'm just going to put that right on the front, like so. Okay, so now I'm taking the scarf, and I'm going to emboss that on a piece of the Poppy Parade. So I got a little strip here. So I'm going to take some of my glue to put this scarf on. I really wasn't sure about adding the scarf, but you know what? It's nice to have a little whimsy on a Christmas card. Just line that up like so. And he's gonna go on with Stampin' Dimensionals. Now I hadn't planned on using this stamp set when I started making today's card. It just kind of evolved as they do. So since I am using the moose, I'm gonna use Merry Christmas on the front. And my guy will get quite a kick out of that, I do believe. I want to cover that green mark, and I'm going to have him kind of, I want his feet to come down here where I've got that shading. I'm really happy with how this card is coming along. I had no intentions on doing this card for my guide today, but it just started flowing. So I'm actually going to take a little bit of my glue and just add a little bit of glue behind his little feet here and press them down onto the card. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Take Your Pick tool, and I'd like to add dimension to things, so I'm going to add a little bit of dimension to the scarf. So I'm just going to roll it up and around. So it has a little bit of dimension. Okay, so now I'm taking a piece of this ribbon from our Forever Greenery combo. I'm just going to snip off a bit. And I'm going to take my crumb cake ink pad and I'm going to dye that. So I'm just going to swipe my ink pad right over that ribbon because I don't want it to be vanilla. Okay, now I have crumb cake ribbon. So I'm going to trim this on a diagonal. And I'm going to cut this a little bit shorter. Okay, so I am going to take a couple of glue dots and I'm just going to stick them right at the end of this ribbon so that I can fold this ribbon down. And this card is almost finished. Oh no, it's stuck to my nail. That's all right. There we go. Okay, let's fold this over. I just wanted to do that so I had a nice edge instead of a frayed edge, which is happening right here. There we go. Okay. Bring my card back in. And I'm going to put some seal right down here. I'm going to put this ribbon just up there. And now I'm taking some of my linen thread and I'm going to make a bow. Okay, so now I have my linen thread bow, a little loopy. And I have some long tails on it, and that's because I'm going to add a couple of our jingle bells. Now I have a trick when I'm adding or threading anything through anything tiny is I have these little flossers, kind of hard to see maybe, and they are awesome, not just for when you're doing your teeth, but when you're in your craft room. So I am just going to put one end through the loop of this flosser. Fold it down, and then this piece is going to go right through my bell, and then I can just pull that end in like it's nobody's business, and then I'm just going to tie a little knot. Okay, and I'll come back and trim that in a minute. I'm going to do the same thing with this guy. I had the bells on, I just glued my bow. I just used a glue dot to put it on the ribbon. Unfortunately, I didn't realize my camera had stopped running. But then I made another bow with the linen thread and just put that on top so that I had a nice double bow. And I am so tickled with how this card turned out. I absolutely love it. And I think the Merry Moose really added to it as well, and of course the bells are so much fun. And I absolutely love the technique that I shared with you today for making the snowbanks and that winter sky. I know I'm going to be making many more cards for my Christmas cards that I'll be sending to friends and family this year using this background technique. I may not be putting the moose on. I might be just using the trees and adding a nice sentiment, and I'll either do another video or I'll just share those cards on my blog. But it's actually a pretty quick process once you get going on them. I just make all my backgrounds and then do all my stamping. And even just to have one big tree in the center as the focal piece, and maybe a star or something, it's just such a fun card to make, and an awesome masking and sponging technique. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video today. I always appreciate that. And if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button and the little bell next to it, which will let you know every time I upload a new video. And if you did enjoy today's video, I would really be grateful if you hit that thumbs up. Thank you so much, my friends. Have a wonderful day. Stay well and safe, and happy stamping.